Okay, so last week or 2 weeks ago, when we were watching this, GTA was released with all the usual violence and prostitutes and drug busts and all the things that it's famous for. But it's come in for a bit of a critique because of a torture scene which allows you to waterboard and electrocute some guy to get information out of him. We've all played the game or watched the game or watched the scene in question. So Jazza, what do you think of this whole kerfuffle and
Kerfuffle.
yeah, just
Um, So I'm the only one who's actually physically done the scene. That sounds weird. I'm the only one who's actually been there in the game and waterboarded somebody in the game. And all the time that I was doing it, I was feeling very, very conflicted. It's a very strange. It's a very intense feeling that you get, and also it's very personal to you because it's like, oh, I'm actively choosing to waterboard somebody here and break his knees and electrocute his nipples. Oh, isn't this? You don't get enjoyment out of it, and I don't think you're expected to get enjoyment out of it. I don't think the way that the storyline is set up, you're expected to enjoy hurting this guy in order to get information.
So what do you think it's intended to be a kind of, I don't know what the word would be, but you're intended to think about what it is you're doing.
Yeah.
It's intended to be a challenging scene.
Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but yeah.
Are you empathetic to the guy? Does the guy have any? Is there any sort of backstory on the guy in question, or is it just?
You need to identify somebody at a party so you can shoot him, and you need to get this information from this guy.
So you're torturing one guy so you can murder another guy.
Exactly. The thing is, the reason that I think you might be onto something about the fact that it encourages people to think about torture is at the end, the character that you play shows compassion and lets the guy go, and actually drops him off at the airport so that he can run away.
Right.
And on the way to the airport, they're having this. I don't think you'd be able to see this in any of the footage that's been uploaded to YouTube, but they have a conversation. And he's like, "This is something that happens, and you just need to get over the fact that this has happened." As soon as it's
an interesting style of counselling.
Like, don't worry about your nipples.
yeah, you don't have nipples anymore, but yeah. But it genuinely does by making you have to actively go through torturing somebody, and by presenting this person that you torture as a person at the end.
Yeah.
I think that you're a pretty cold-hearted person if you go through that and you don't feel any emotion at all. And in that way, I think it is a fucking masterpiece. I think it is an amazing piece of media. Should under-18s be playing it? Probably not. But maybe you guys have different views on that.
Yeah, what do you make of it, Ali?
Well, I mean, I think Jazza brought up an interesting point. Like, there are 2 points really here. The first is, I think that, like, often the sort of should under-18s be playing it. Well, actually, I feel like most 17-year-olds would be fine with this. Most 15-year-olds would probably be able to handle it.
But when I played GTA 3 for the first time, I was like 11.
Yeah, and like I was 12, so like but at the same time, like I remember sort of having awareness of that world, and like kind of maybe not understanding everything, but kind of giggling at it rather than maybe taking it too seriously, and having a pretty clear line between sort of reality and fantasy.
Do you think that the way that I went through that torture scene, it was maybe I'm being a soppy bastard and whatever, but
you were emotionally
I was emotionally involved in that, and I felt the consequences of the stuff that I was doing, despite the fact that it was on a video game. Do you think that a 12-year-old's going to be interpreting it in the same way, or are they just going to be using it as a game? Is that a good thing?
I think potentially not, and I think it's probably not a good thing for them to go through it like a game. But having said that, I think it's probably not going to be damaging either. Like, I don't think that, because they're playing this game, they'll start waterboarding their friends when,
See, I don't know now, because for a lot of people, waterboarding was a abstract concept.
Yeah.
They didn't. They knew that it was a form of torture and that they did it in Guantanamo Bay, and that was about it.
Yeah.
But now you have seen somebody do it, and I, for one, I didn't really know how to waterboard somebody, but now I have that knowledge.
You also know how to electrocute
Careful,
someone's
Jimmy.
nipples.
I saw a video, I think it was a couple of years back, of Christopher Hitchens getting waterboarded, which he did partly to experience it and actually establish whether it was a form of torture.
And he
came
gives
out
up
with
in
the
like
exper-
5 seconds, right?
Yeah. I mean, well, not surprisingly, he's like over 50 and quite overweight. So the idea that he'd be able to withstand that form of torture for any length of time is pretty unlikely. But what I find interesting about this game is that in a lot of video games you go through killing people and just being violent the game I'm thinking of right now is just Assassin's Creed, where you can kill people in any number of ways, and you do it unthinkingly all the time, and it's just a very trivial thing. What's interesting about this scene is that, as Jazz has kind of said, is that it does direct your attention towards what you're doing and the sort of legitimacy of violence, which is a weird thing for a game about gangsters to actually do. But no, I think I think it is kind of, it's not necessarily a bad thing that they've gone and done this, really.
I think it's interesting that it made it into such a mainstream game. I don't know what to say about it other than I'm interested about the fact that it made it in. I guess one of the things about GTA is it's kind of got a mandate to shock. In the last game there was the hot coffee thing, and I almost wonder if they're doing, they have to include one super controversial thing as
No, but
as
the
part of the marketing strategy.
the hot coffee thing was a mistake. That was lost code. That was code.
Well, it was
that
added
just
in.
left in that. It
Yeah.
wasn't added in. It was
By the
floated
developer,
as a
right?
potential part of the game, and then it was scrapped. But the code was left over, and so people were able to hack into it.
Yeah.
Hot coffee, we should say, was it was a hack
In San
that-
Andreas.
Yeah, which allowed you to. It was some sort of sex scene thing, wasn't it?
With
They
a
can
stripper,
kill
yeah,
prostitutes,
copies
yay.
This whole thing actually reminds me of the. Do you remember the Call of Duty thing a few years back, where you go into an airport and shoot it up?
Yeah.
And there was a huge controversy about that. Which the weird thing is, in the context, I guess it's because you were playing a terrorist, and particularly in America, the whole terrorist thing is really fraught. But in the game, most of the time you play a soldier who is just going around killing loads of people. But as soon as you actually reverse the people who are being killed, it stops being just faceless, Middle Eastern guys,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and starts being just Western civilians.
Yeah.
Then you actually have a huge controversy and it blows up, which seems really stupid and very hypocritical, really.
I think that something that GTA brings to the table is really fantastically written story and really deep characters, and it really encourages you to engage with that. And it is to a certain it also gets a lot of rap for misogyny, and misogyny is a recurring theme that comes up in The Right Dishonourable. But it gets a bad rap for having really shallow and uninteresting female characters, and stereotyping of ethnic groups, and glorification of drug use. But at the end of the day, it's a really friggin' awesome game to play.
I mean,
And
it's
there's
supposed to be a comedy, though, isn't it? It's not. It's not really intended as representative of real life.
No, of course
I think
not.
you'd struggle to play through GTA without thinking at some point this is ridiculous. But at the same time, I think it's a satire more than it is a comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What do you think the difference is between a satire and a comedy?
I think one thing you're meant to kind of laugh at, and the other maybe just is
to laugh at the farce
commentary.
of it.
I think
Yeah.
exactly. It's commentary. So
Are we giving GTA too much credit by calling it social commentary, though? At the end of the day, it's just driving over pedestrians, isn't it?
But people tend to have that attitude about games, that because there's this whole thing that they're not a serious art form, and for the majority of games I'd kind of agree with that, but I'd also say that's true of the majority of books and the majority of music as well.
50 Shades and Twilight.
Well, there
Exhibit
you go.
A and B.
But people the public seem to have this view that video games are about GTA and COD and FIFA or whatever, and there's actually loads and loads of, I'm not going to say better games because that makes me sound like a pretentious art wanker, but
Oh, and you never sound
Well,
like
you-
that anyway, Jimmy. Don't you worry.
In indie games. Do you want to say indie games?
well, there's a lot of games
Well,
that
stuff
actually
like Flower and Minecraft to a certain extent.
I wouldn't say Minecraft's
Subway Surfers.
art exactly, but there's a lot of
I think that Minecraft could be classed as art.
people make arts in I think Minecraft's a brilliant game, but I mean sort of your more story-driven games that actually do explore interesting themes and ideas, which is what art allegedly is supposed to do. At least
So
some of the
is
time.
GTA 5 art?
Yeah, it is art. It's just not particularly highbrow art.
Ali,
I
is
guess.
it art?
Yeah, definitely. Yes.
Is it art that should have high restrictions on what people can play it?
I mean,
I don't know how you'd enforce those restrictions.
I
to be
think
honest.
that-
What other than what we already have, like certificates? Yeah.
which don't work.
We used to drink bottle gins and the whole world had to sing. Meet the trees and on such fun. We used to dance, we'll take a chance. I lost my mind to young romance. Yeah, I don't mind, I got it back. Half the time I'm waiting for a second chance.